Hi everybody, welcome to this video. Prince Charles recently said, the nature of this planet is like air conditioning and we are trying very hard to switch it off abruptly. The intensity of this statement can only be understood when we start wondering about the problems this planet is facing. So today I have with me a very eminent personality. His name is Mr. M.N. Jaikumar. He's a retired forest official and he has worked in the forest department for a long time in various capacities. So today, let us talk to him and understand about his life and all the amazing things that he has been doing in the Karnataka Forest Department. And before I ask questions to him, I'd love to tell you a little bit about him. Before that, sir, welcome to this chat.
Thank you so much, Jayant.
Yeah. So, Mr. M.N. Jaikumar is somebody who is from my native, which is Mysore. And I think he went to the College of Agriculture. He's a very studious, he was a very studious, what can I say, student while he was studying agriculture. He's also won medals and gold medals. I also learned recently that he was a first rank holder in the Indian Forest College, Dehradun, which I believe is now called Indira Gandhi Forest Academy.
It's Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy.
National Forest Academy. Yeah. Oh, I beg your pardon there. Then he's, of course, somebody who is an ace photographer, one of the very few forest officials who took up photography seriously, especially 15, 20, 25 years ago, how the forest officials were working and how he got into photography. That's going to be the core of our discussion today. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for calling me. Yeah.
Sir, one of my first questions to you is about, of course, your early life. You're from Mysore, I believe you're born there. So please take us through some of your early days as a student, as a Mysorean. How was the surroundings of Mysore, all the national parks around? How did you get inspired to be? I read somewhere that you always knew you were an outdoors person. So I'd love to know a little bit about your childhood and early days.
Yeah, as you said, I'm also a Mysorean like you. I was born and brought up there. I had my initial schooling in Sharda Vilas High School, Mysore.
Oh, fantastic.
In the south of Mysore.
Right.
And then while doing my 10th standard and thereafter my PUC, my father was very much interested in progressive farming.
I see.
Besides being an industrialist.
Right.
So he just sort of introduced me to some of the local, agriculture department officials like the deputy director of agriculture and so on.
Right.
So I had the opportunity of touring with them.
I see.
Occasionally when I had some free time.
Right.
To get to know how agriculture is being practiced in and around Mysore.
Right.
That's how my early career began.
Right.
And thereafter, after passing PUC, there were two options for me, either to join the Agricultural University at Bangalore, and I also got an admission at the Manipal Medical College.
Oh, I see.
But somehow I preferred to spend a life where I spend most of the time outdoors.
Right.
So I preferred to join the Agricultural University. That was way back in 1968.
Right.
So I did this 4 years course in Hebal, and as you said, I got the second rank and 2 gold medals.
Fantastic.
And then unfortunately, while I was pursuing my agricultural graduation, I lost my father in an accident.
Oh, okay.
That was in 1971.
I see.
Later I came to know that his ambition was that I should take up grape farming.
I see. Okay.
And he had already plans to buy about 150 or 200 acres of land for me to take up grape cultivation.
I see.
Since he passed away in between,
Right.
that his dream had to be buried.
Right.
And then I started pursuing my post-graduation in agriculture.
I see. Okay.
That was a time when one of my uncles who came to Mysore to look after our family after my father's untimely death
Right.
suggested, why don't you try this competitive exam wherein officers are being recruited in the forest service.
Absolutely.
So I competed there and got through.
I see.
And went to the Indian Forest College then, and now it's called Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy at Dehradun
Right.
for a 2-year training program.
Fantastic.
That's how I ended up in forest service.
Fantastic.
Because of the untimely demise of my father, I got shifted from being a grape farmer to a forester.
Even before that, Dr. Jaikumar to a grape farmer, Jaikumar to additional PCCF and, fantastic. Everything has its own destiny.
Yeah. Maybe, another small incident. In 1971 was the last Kedda that was held in Kakankote Forest.
Fantastic.
And my father had bought tickets and took me
Right.
to show the Kedda.
Right.
Maybe the seed of forestry
Right.
was sown when I witnessed the Grand Kedda in January 1971.
Fantastic. Sir, this was a question that I wanted to ask you. Since 1971, 1972 was the year when things changed in India with respect to wildlife, the Protection Act and stuff like that. And you were saying that's when you were just about a 20, 21-year-old young man. And I mean, great to know that you went to see the Kedda. For people who have no clue of what Kedda is, can you briefly tell us what was it like and why were they doing it?
See, actually, it was a sort of capturing surplus elephants that were there in the forest, train them, and use them in forestry services.
Right.
And also to promote it as a sport because it had global audience.
I see.
So they would drive a herd of elephants to a particular place and then see that they don't move away.
Right.
And then thereafter they are driven into small enclosures
Right.
where they are trapped.
Right.
And by the assistance of trained mahouts and our department elephants, they are roped, taken to elephant camps,
Right.
trained,
Right.
and later on they are put to various uses,
Sure.
be it in the forest department or also in Mysore Palace during Dasara time and all that. Yeah.
That's interesting. I also realized one more thing. You were born in the same year my father was born, and he also had similar experiences as a young man, as a teenager. He has been to Kakan Kote when he was 15, 16. It seems he has also seen the Kedda operations. But can you take us a little bit to the history of Kedda? Is it something which was happening during the Maharaja's era, or is it mostly post-British Forest Department initiative?
I think it started around early 1900.
I see.
And then before that, the method of capturing elephants was by pit method.
Oh, okay.
So that was practiced in Assam and other states.
Correct.
And that was also tried in Karnataka as well.
Right.
But then they found that this is more sort of challenging and more sort of could be presented as a nice sport.
Right.
Where
right.
people also could witness
Right,
on a grander scale.
Right.
So that's how I think it got changed over in the early 1900s. Yeah.
Sure. So from making a ditch and getting the elephants inside to creating an enclosure and driving them, it evolved over time, right?
That's true. That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So Kedda has been an interesting topic. We are researching on that to blog about it as well. So you might see some information about Kedda operations. And of course, as you said, 71 it stopped.
Yeah.
After the Wildlife Protection
Yeah,
Act.
that's big. No, not because of the Wildlife Protection Act, because they built this dam across River Kabini.
Absolutely.
And that area where they were performing this Kedda operation
Right.
got submerged.
Correct.
So they had to give it up.
Fantastic. Oh, that's interesting to know. Yeah, the Kakan Kote
Yeah.
backwaters of Kabini area. Fantastic. Sir, so from getting inspiration to nature and wildlife from events like these, take us through your journey to forestry. How did you become an IFS?
Yeah, as I said, on the advice of my uncle, I wrote this competitive exam and got through and went to the Indian Forest College, and I was there for 2 years, underwent the training.
Right.
And I topped there, got honors, bagged number of awards, and then came back to Karnataka, and I was recruited as the Assistant Conservator of Forests.
Fantastic.
And my first posting was at Shivamogga,
Wow.
in charge of the vigilance squad.
Oh,
I
lovely.
mean, those were the times when youngsters, their first postings used to be in squads so that they would be more mobile
Right.
and they would be doing their job more sort of diligently.
Absolutely.
And then,
They're also fitter and
yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So Shivamogga happens to be a place where my mother grew up. She studied in Sahyadri. So
Lots of coincidences. Yeah.
so there's also a zoo there, right?
There is a Tavarekoppa Lion and Tiger Safari.
Right,
It's about 10 kilometers off Shivamogga on Shivamogga Sagar Road.
Right.
Yeah.
I have some interesting questions about zoos. We'll take that up later. But since, from the 70s, so when did you become an IFSR? Which year was that?
79.
79. So it's been close to 41, 42 years now. So you retired about 8-9 years ago, I remember.
January 2012.
8 years ago. All right.
Yeah,
It'll be 9 next month.
Next month, yeah.
So in the last 30 years, you were an IFS, right? So from 79 to, let's say, 2012, 32, 33 years.
Yeah.
Did you see the department evolving from what was the responsibilities, the challenges back then in the 70s to what it ended up being in the late 2000s and 2010, 12 kind of a situation? Was there any change you noticed?
Yeah, there is a drastic shift. I should say, I mean, people of my age and people, officers earlier to me, as our designation suggests, we are all conservators.
Right.
You begin as an assistant conservator of forest, then end up as a chief conservator or a principal chief conservator.
Right.
So our role was more of a conservative nature.
Right.
And there was hardly any scope or possibility of interacting or involving people
Right.
in whatever task we were doing.
Right.
But the whole thing got a rational shift in the mid-80s.
Right.
So when the Government of India and state governments realized that if we have to enlarge the green cover from the existing 20-21% to 33%,
Right.
we need to move out of our domain
Right.
of the forest
Sure.
and then involve people and try to green areas which are not belonging to the forest department.
Absolutely.
That's how the concept of social forestry came in. So with the advent of social forestry, we also became more social,
Right.
started interacting and involving people,
Right.
both in forest administration
Right.
as also in wildlife administration.
Fantastic. So I must tell you, Karnataka Forest Department is an exemplary department. I mean, I've been involved with various different states and forest departments, but somehow, maybe because I'm here, I don't know. Karnataka Forest Department has always been somebody who, comes up with some innovative ideas and stuff like that. So I'm very proud. In fact, I must tell you, when I started entering forests, learning about the national parks and stuff like that, we always knew about your presence, and when it came to me getting into photography, I already was hearing some names, amongst which yours was one of the prominent names. So let us discuss a little about, while you were a conservator working on various things in the forest department, I would be surprised if somebody is not interested in photography these days, but back then I think it was not very common for a forest officer to pick up a camera and start getting into the wild, right? So how did this transition happen?
Yeah, very true. Not many were practicing serious photography back then. See, I was posted as Deputy Conservator of Forests, Mysore, between 91 and 95. So, lot many well-known figures of photography
Right.
used to come
Right.
to visit either Bandipur or Nagarhole.
Right.
Either on their way up or way back, they used to drop by, spend some time with me, and then maybe have lunch or dinner or breakfast or whatever that was possible.
Sure.
And then I was fascinated by their interest and by their works, and I also saw some of their works.
Right.
And then it was one of those occasions in 93, Mr. Neginal,
Right.
another senior colleague of mine,
Right.
came to me along with Mr. T.N.A. Perumal, T.N.A. Perumal, who happened to be my guru and mentor subsequently,
Right.
and Mr. B.N.S. Dev.
Oh, okay.
He is the Maharaja of Korea state in Madhya Pradesh,
Oh, I see.
but he lives in Bangalore.
I see.
And then he's a contemporary of our Jai Chamaraj Wadiyar.
Oh, I see.
So, and then I also happened to meet Mr. E. Hanumantrao, a very well-known photographic figure at that point of time.
Absolutely.
So, when I was interacting with all these greats, Neginal jocularly remarked that the people from across the world come to Mysore for seeing wildlife and photographing wildlife.
Right.
You being the deputy conservators of this district,
Right,
you are wasting your time. So, this remark really spurred me on.
Right.
But as you would appreciate, for doing wildlife photography, you need to have some good equipment.
Absolutely.
Without which it's of no use at all.
True.
And then those days, getting good equipment was also a very big problem.
Right. Right.
Fortunately for me, my relatives were there in the Netherlands.
I see.
And I think this remark of Neginal happened around July or August. And my relatives were coming to India the following month.
I see. Yeah.
So immediately I sent them a message that I may be interested to procure
Right.
a few equipments and if you could help me out.
Sure.
Fortunately for me, their neighbor was a very well-known photographer and he was running a photography school
Oh, I see.
in the Netherlands.
Right. Right.
So he helped me out. He said, no, I can get some of these equipments even at a slight discount.
Right.
I would help you out.
Right.
That's how I got my first camera, Nikon camera,
Right.
F90X.
Oh, wow.
That was my first camera.
I remember.
And a small zoom lens, 70 to 300 mm or so.
Absolutely.
So I began with that.
Fantastic, sir. Everything falls in place when it has to.
I know. Time has to be there for that, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, sir. So talking about photography, you have been in an era which was a transitional era. And I remember if you've been, doing photography in the 90s, within a decade of you doing photography, we transitioned into the digital era.
That's it, yeah.
So I remember I had some interactions with Mr. Perumal myself as a 25-year-old back then. How was this transition for you? Did that seem like a big challenge, or was that just a part of the game and you evolved into the digital world?
No, I took a decision abruptly.
Okay,
In fact, see, from Nikon I migrated to Canon.
I see.
It so happened that when I used to go to Rangantittu,
Right,
my Nikon lenses in low light was hunting.
I see.
It was not, the focus was not getting fixed.
I see.
Whereas the friend of mine who was using a Canon equipment, he had no such problems.
Right, right.
So after realizing this, that for low light situations we might miss out on something, I shifted from Nikon to Canon, maybe around 97 or 98.
Okay,
And I was using a EOS 1V,
Right.
one of their best cameras at that point of time of Canon.
sure.
And then thereafter, when the digital revolution took place, I watched it for a while. Since I had most of my lenses in Canon, I bought my first digital camera. I think it was Canon 20D.
I see. Sure.
So I started it 20D.
Right,
Then I upgraded it to 40D.
right,
And then I went to 1D Mark III.
right.
And thereafter 5D Mark III.
Right.
Like that, I worked with Canon for quite some time.
Sure, sure. I'll ask you about your current equipment later on. But back then, right? So, unlike today, there are many photography mentor schools and stuff like that. Back then, I suppose there were fewer, people who were willing to invest time to teach others, and I think most people back then learned by doing it their own thing. Was it something different to what you noticed?
No, for me, it was like by trial and error.
Right.
So then I started off with films to begin with. I didn't go to the transparencies directly.
Okay.
I spent about 2 to 3 years
Right.
to learn the nuisance of photography by using films.
Right.
So I used to expose images in Rangantittu, Bandipur, Nagarola and all that,
Right.
and get them printed on postcard size prints
Sure.
and from a commercial studio in Mysore.
Right. Right.
Then take these postcard images to Mr. Perumal
Right.
for his expert comments or advice.
Right.
Perumal being so sort of an introvert, he won't talk much.
Right.
He will take a look at all these images. If I exposed about 36 or 38 images in a roll, he would first take a look at all the 38. And then initially he will take a second look. And then he will just bundle them together and hand it back to me. He says, I think perhaps you will get better opportunities. In other words, he says he's not very happy
Right,
what I got.
Sure.
So like that it began. Maybe after, I was proving him why this is good or why this is not good.
Right.
So then he would explain
Sure.
why he is not approving of a particular image.
I understand.
So that's how I came to know what we should look for while taking photographs.
Fantastic.
Like that, I started improving. Maybe 6 months down the line, again when I go back with 36 or 38 images with to Perumal, 2 images he will keep them aside,
Right.
and the other 34 he will reject.
Right. Right.
And then he will say why he has selected those 2.
Absolutely.
And he will put a single tick on the back of the image.
Right.
That means 1 tick.
Right.
Another 3 months down the line, again another repetition of a similar thing.
Right.
He will select maybe 4 images,
Right.
put 2 ticks on 2 images and single tick on 2 images. The double tick means it's a better image.
Oh, of course.
Then I would ask questions, leading questions to him.
Why is it better?
Why is it better? So that's how the learning process began.
Fantastic. Amazing. I can relate to some of it because my father would tear it off. Forget. Anyway, so great. So now, have you been actively doing photography in the last few years, or is it on and off?
My latest photography trip was only last month.
Oh, fantastic. Lovely. Good to know that. So I heard that you have now moved to Sony, like me. What's your current lineup of gear?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, now presently I'm using Sony mirrorless. This is purely from the point of view of convenience.
Right.
Because the traditional equipments were all quite bulky and heavy. And then with me having some issues of knee and back, I thought I must reduce the load.
Right.
So I now shifted to, now at the moment I have A7 R3 and A7 R4 as my bodies. I have 3 lenses, one 24-70, then 100-400 G Master,
Right.
and the 200-600.
Right.
With 3 I'm managing.
Fantastic.
Maybe I'm going to upgrade to A9 or A9 II
Right.
very soon.
Looking forward to your images with those amazing camera gear.
I know.
Okay, sir. One of the good things that I know you have done is come up with some books. And I remember I had even attended an exhibition of yours a few years ago in Chitrakala Parishad. I still remember that, I think was it Machli, a big 44-inch or even bigger image, 2 feet by 3 feet or even more, I think 4 feet wide image of a portrait of one of the cats in Raj Behra.
Yeah, I think it was Sundari,
Sundari,
daughter of Machli.
Machli.
Daughter of Machli, yeah. That's
2007 time, I think.
2008.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
2000, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your beautiful coffee table book, which is Life in the Jungle: Memoirs of a Forester. What's in that book? If anybody's interested, I'd love to ask them to buy it and have a look at it, sir.
Before that book, let me go back in time to the year 2001.
Right.
So, Mr. Paramal and I, we were traveling to Bandipur,
Right.
particularly Enbegur. And then while we were on the move, this thought came to us. At that point of time, if you just go back, 80% of the good nature and wildlife photographers were in Karnataka,
Absolutely.
in the country.
Right.
And of them, majority of them were in Bangalore. And then Karnataka can boast of a fantastic forest wealth and wildlife content.
Right.
So then we realized there are so many photographers living in Karnataka, and our wildlife is so beautiful.
Right.
There are so many images that have been captured. Why not we put them together,
Right.
so that those images are not lost forever?
Great.
So this thought I suggested to Mr. Paramal, he readily accepted.
Fantastic.
Then with this thought, we moved forward and came out with a coffee table book called Encounters in the Forest.
Right.
It is a compilation of images taken in Karnataka by 60 well-known photographers, Karnataka.
Oh, fabulous.
And then incidentally, this book was released by the then Chief Minister of Karnataka, Mr. S.M. Krishna.
Oh, okay.
And he was so happy and pleased. And initially he had allotted a time of 30 minutes for the book release function.
Right.
It went on for 2 hours because Mr. M.Y. Gorpade and Mr. K.H. Ranganath, two of our ministers, were also there. And the book release function turned out into a sort of a panel discussion
Oh.
to discuss various issues on conservation and how to sort of take Karnataka further in the field of nature conservation.
Fantastic. This was 2001.
2001 November.
No wonder I didn't know too much about this book because I had not started doing wildlife photography then. So thank you for that book. It's on my desk. I'd love to go through that.
Please
but
go
if
through.
if somebody wants to buy it, where is it available right now?
Unfortunately, it's out of print.
Oh, I see.
There are only 3 or 4 copies that were left, and I gave one to you today.
Oh, fantastic. If anybody wants to see this coffee table book, of course, after I have, you're welcome to Toehold to have a look at it, but you cannot take it with you. Sorry. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's a precious book because you say only 3 copies left. Thank you. But what about Life in the Jungle? I would love to know about that coffee table book.
See, before Life in the Jungle, as you said, I had organized a one-man show of my photographic prints in Chitrakala Parishad in 2008.
Right.
Perhaps that was the first attempt made in Bangalore to put out large prints in color using the technology available of inkjet printing
Absolutely.
and the Epson technology.
Absolutely.
So I knew a friend in Bangalore who is a color management expert, considered one of the best in the world.
I see.
So he also was dealing with Epson equipment, and then he agreed that he would speak to Epson and try to get some fantastic images.
Right. Right.
So we put out a show of about 140 images, of which maybe about 30 or 40 were inkjet prints,
Right.
and the rest were the traditional prints.
Right. Right.
And then, as you rightly said, some of those images printed 3 feet by 5 feet and like that. Maybe for the first time
Right.
in the history of Bangalore, such big prints on color
Absolutely.
were exhibited.
Right.
And that exhibition attracted a lot of crowd because there was a lot of media attention and media sort of publicity given.
Absolutely.
About 10,000 people visited the exhibition. Lots of school children
Right.
were coming in busloads.
Absolutely.
I was interacting with them and then telling about the natural wealth that we have in the state and in the country.
Right. Right.
And then in that process also we attracted lots of politicians, bureaucrats and sports personalities.
Right. Right.
Anil Kumble walked by.
Right. Okay.
So was Dinesh Kumble.
Oh, lovely.
Then we became quite friendly and then we did some forestry trips together.
Right.
We did some photography trips together also. And post my retirement, Dinesh Kumble was after me.
Oh,
He
okay.
is telling that now it's time that you should put all your images and come out with a coffee table book.
Right.
So I retired in January 2012 and then started selecting tentative images
Right. Right.
to be included in the book.
Sure.
I selected about 500 and odd images.
Right.
Initially, I took it to my mentor, Mr. Perumal. He scaled it down to around 300.
Right.
And then taking various aspects into consideration, logistics and costing and all that, we zeroed in on about 240 to 250 images
Fantastic.
in a book of 240 pages,
Fantastic.
with images taken in 25 national parks and sanctuaries across India and Yala of Sri Lanka.
Fantastic, sir. I think that's available for purchase.
Few copies are available. If anybody is interested, you kindly let me know.
I will.
It's not sort of brought out on a commercial scale because
Right.
of pricing.
Right.
So we were doing direct marketing.
Right.
If I am not wrong, maybe 150 or 180 copies are remaining now.
Oh, lovely. That's quite a lot. In case anybody wants, please comment. I will definitely give you information of how to get that book. So, one of the things I used to be told by my father about Mr. Hanumant Rao, who was an ace wildlife photographer back then, is his partnership with his wife. He was telling me, Magu, 50 mm kodu andre, our hindi 50 mm etkortidru. That was the knowledge she has about the lens, and they were a very nice, team on fields many days. He said, I don't know how he knows all that. I also know that your wife is a very avid nature lover and also a photographer. I would love to know a little bit about her and how she has been of great support to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have a very understanding family. Both my wife and my two children, all are nature lovers, and then all are into photography. So though I started photography in '93, way back then I had only one camera and one lens.
Right.
So she used to accompany me, and then subsequently I could procure one more camera and a couple of more lenses.
Right.
And then initially she was assisting me, and then a year later I think she started photography from '94.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I saw some pictures of her using a 100-400 or some kind of a lens
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
it. Yeah, she is. Now, right, even now she uses Canon 70 Mark II with a 100-400 lens.
Fantastic. Please convey my regards to her.
Surely I'll do that. Thank you.
All right, sir. Talking about photography, I know that you've been academically very involved in photography to an extent where you actively participated in the past, at least in salons and photography clubs and stuff like that. I remember 10 years ago when the World Cup of Wildlife Photography happened, you were actively involved. I think we also won prizes as a team.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? So can you please tell us what are these clubs and salons that you are even now involved with perhaps and you were actively participating in?
See, right now I'm a life member of the Youth Photographic Society in Bangalore. And then I stopped participating in salons maybe 15 years ago.
I see.
And then whenever people ask me to sort of be a judge, to judge some of their salon entries, I do accept.
Right.
And then if people ask me to give talks, I go and give talks to create an awareness of why we should protect our rich wildlife and forests and things like that.
Right.
And as you rightly said, way back in 2010, FIAP, that is the International Federation of Photographic Art,
Right.
who conduct Nature Photography World Cup once in 2 years, offered that competition to be held in India.
Right.
And fortunately, it was held in Bangalore, and I was made the chairman of the organizing committee.
Fantastic.
And then Mercedes-Benz were the primary sponsors of the event,
Right.
and then Indian Oil were the co-sponsors, and Taj Group of Hotels were the hospitality partners.
Fantastic.
I think entries from about close to 40 countries had come. And in this particular event, the country has to send the entry.
True.
So it could be in two ways, either by way of prints or in digital format.
I see.
By way of print, there could be 10 entries per country with only one work from author.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, limited to one work per author.
I see.
And when it comes to digital entries, it could be 10 authors and not more than 2 works per author.
I see. Interesting.
So that's how
A team was made.
The country has to send the entries.
Right. Right.
So about 35, 36 countries had sent their respective entries, and we had organized judging and all that. And then I think in that World Cup, India won the World Cup in the digital section,
Right.
and gold medal in the print section.
Fantastic. I remember, I think Alliance Francaise, we were there. There was a presentation. I think some South African photographers also had come.
Yeah.
I remember that event very vividly.
I think a photographer by name Jill Sneesby. I think she had come from South Africa.
Also some Gillian, I vaguely remember, some name who had done some work in the hides in Namibia and stuff like that. But anyway, my memory could be. All right. So talking about salons and photography, wildlife photography, which has now become such a huge, I don't know if the word craze is right, but it's definitely something more and more people are doing.
True.
thanks to organizations like ours, we kind of create new photographers every month through workshops and stuff like that. So I don't think anybody else is in a better position to answer this question than yourself. How do you see a parallel between wildlife photography and wildlife conservation? Do you think there are serious, avenues for wildlife photographers to actually contribute into conservation initiatives? What has been your experience, sir?
Definitely, wildlife photography has a role to play in conservation. A conservationist or a photographer has to be on the ground to achieve whatever result he is aspiring for.
Right,
He can't sit in out of a glass house tower and then carry on his work.
right,
So there are two aspects of photography. One is photography by setting up camera traps without the photographer being physically there.
right.
So by that way, we generate a lot of data and information.
Sure.
For instance, most of our tiger reserves, we do set up at least about 100 camera traps
Right.
in each of our parks.
True.
So this would give enough indication as to the presence or absence of a predator in a given area,
Right.
their movement, and then their densities. And also, when we have enough number of images, we can even identify the particular individual animal.
Absolutely.
So just like the Aadhaar number being given to human beings,
Right.
now the National Tiger Conservation Authority of India is planning to give unique identification numbers
Right.
to each and every tiger that is found in the country by way of images and data captured
Right.
through these camera traps.
Fantastic.
So this is one major role where photography is playing
Right.
a very active role in conservation.
True.
Additionally, as you rightly say, it is often said that a good photograph is worth 1,000 words.
True.
So what can't be explained in 1,000 words perhaps can be impressed upon by showing a photograph.
Absolutely.
So photographs could be used for creating awareness among the people, more so the urban elite.
Right.
And then photographs play a very important role in documentation.
Right.
What is available in a given area. If you have to document and put out and show, the photographs do help.
True. True.
Then it again helps in identification of species.
True.
Two birds could be looking similar. There could be a minute difference.
Right.
To the naked eye, it is not apparent.
Right.
But when you have two photographs of these two individual birds,
Right.
then you can identify what is what. So it helps in identification.
Sure.
And again, say in terms of proving poaching cases, photographs could be a potential very important tool
Interesting.
in getting evidence.
Okay.
Yeah, in proving the charge that so and so has done this mistake,
Right.
and he should be punished for what he has done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it strengthens us
Right.
in the Evidence Act. Yeah.
Right. Looking forward to many more photo enthusiasts. Also, I feel one very less discussed but very massive impact photographers do is they educate their own household. Like, for example, my mother, father, uncle, aunt who would never know about the forest will get introduced by all of us going there again and again.
It's like a wildfire, it spreads. Yeah. From within the family, it goes to the society,
True.
and then to the town, and then city, and like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So one of the interesting things I wanted to discuss with you was the role of zoos in our society. I know in the later part of your career, probably the last few years, I remember you were in Mysore and you were involved in the Mysore Zoo. Pardon me, I don't exactly remember the capacity in which you were there, but I do know I met you a couple of times in Mysore and in the zoo as well. What I see amongst the common people is they have an opinion which is very strong about zoos. A lot of people think zoos are bad, they torture animals, they keep them in 2x2 or 3x3 cages. For various reasons, they feel zoos are negative for many aspects. And at the same time, some people who move beyond what's visible to the eye and what meets the eye start understanding different aspects of the zoo's role. So from a person who has managed zoos in various capacities, what's your opinion on why we use zoos, what's the purpose of it, what should we be doing, what's already great and what should improve, sir? Sorry, it's a long question.
No problem. Yeah. See, way back in 78, I was posted as the officer in charge of Mysore Zoo.
Oh, I see.
So I was there for a very short period.
I see.
So I almost began my career of managing wildlife in captivity.
I see.
And as you rightly said, my last posting was a member secretary of the Zoo Authority of Karnataka.
Right.
Whereby I was given the responsibility of managing all the wildlife in captivity in Karnataka.
Oh, fantastic.
So For your information, under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, there is a provision for creating a central zoo authority.
I see.
And there exists a central zoo authority for the entire country in Delhi. So they frame rules and regulations, and also they go and visit various zoos, and they are accredited whether they recognize the zoo. So only recognized zoos are allowed to function, and all others have to be disbanded.
Right.
So while giving recognition, they see whether the zoo has enough space for each of the animals, or they are caged, as you are mentioning. So that concept is no longer existing.
Right.
Now they are creating very spacious enclosures. They have very large holding rooms and an open enclosure, and try to create as natural a situation as possible.
Right.
So that the zoo animal also should feel comfortable
Sure.
and not feel stressed.
Absolutely.
So this is the concept, and each zoo has to come out with a zoo management plan, which requires the approval by the Central Zoo Authority.
Right.
Only thereafter even developmental works are permitted.
Sure.
So I was, as sort of the member secretary of the Zoo Authority of Karnataka, we tried to revamp the entire Mysore Zoo. We changed all the old enclosures,
Right.
provided spacious enclosures,
Right.
very large, huge ones.
Absolutely.
And then consequently, it is rated one of the best zoos of the country.
Absolutely.
And almost attracting more than 3 million visitors every year.
Absolutely.
More than what Mysore Palace has been getting.
Absolutely. I'm very proud to be a Mysorean, especially because of the zoo. It was also one of the reasons for me getting involved in nature and wildlife as a kid.
Yeah, as I rightly said, zoos act as centers of learning, centers to educate people, and also the present concept is taking up conservation breeding of animals,
Right.
which require to be bred in captivity.
I see.
Later on, release them into habitats where they are not found, what is known as rewilding.
Right. Right.
So Mysore Zoo is identified as a breeding center for Indian gaur.
Oh,
So we
fantastic.
have acquired a large chunk of forest at the outskirts of Mysore city,
Oh.
where gaurs are being bred.
I see.
And then these gaurs are translocated and released into forests,
Fantastic.
where gaurs are no longer present now, but they were existing then.
Oh.
Maybe for various reasons like rinderpest and other diseases, they got wiped out. But habitat is there without the animal. So such areas are getting restocked
Right.
by breeding animals in captivity.
Fantastic.
So conservation breeding is another important aspect of zoo management.
Sure.
So Mysore Zoo has been breeding gaurs, has been breeding dhole or wild dog, even grey wolf, which is an endangered animal. Mysore Zoo has been successful in breeding them. Sarus cranes, black swans.
Wow.
And there is a small park in Mangalore called Pilikula Nisargadama.
Okay.
They have mastered in breeding king cobras and mouse deer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
they all play a very important role. And the greatest advantage is if a common man wants to see a given animal or bird, he can't afford to go to a forest.
True.
For instance, if you want to see a lion, Asiatic lions are found only in Gujarat state.
Correct.
Not all can afford to go to Gujarat
True.
to see an Asiatic lion.
Sure, sure.
On the contrary, such animals which are rare and unique, if they are present in a school, it provides an opportunity for many
Right.
to see and at least get connected
Sure.
with a given animal or bird as to how they would look like, how they behave, how they manage.
True.
And it becomes great learning centers and motivational centers
Absolutely.
for the children in particular.
True. I can understand the emotions of some youngsters who have, who feel, oh, I don't like zoos because animals are kept in captivity. But like you said, there are many reasons. Some of it I remember. Our common friend Ajit, Dr. Ajit,
yeah.
you remember that incident where he photographed a tiger with a snare?
Yeah, I know.
Masti was the name of the tiger. And I remember seeing it under your leadership in the Mysore Zoo when he was kept in captivity. I think he lost a paw.
Yeah. One leg he had lost. Yeah.
What a ferocious tiger he
That's
was.
true, that's true, yeah.
I remember how he would come and stand in front of the cage and shout and yell, and he was an amazing tiger.
I know.
So if the zoos weren't there, tigers like him would have no place to go as well, right? So it's a old age home or a rehab kind of a situation also.
That apart, we have zoo outreach programs in various zoos. For example, we have what is known as Zoo Youth Club in Mysore, where we enroll students studying in 8th to 10th standard. About 50-60 students are enrolled every year. This particular program is much in demand, so much so that we are restricting only 4 kids per school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then they are asked to come to the zoo every Sunday, spend about 4 to 5 hours.
Right.
So
right.
they will be having the occasion of interacting with the animal. They will have the opportunity of cleaning the cage,
Right.
feeding the animals,
Right.
and even attending the medical care of animals.
Right.
They are exposed to all aspects of zoo management.
Sure.
And also crowd behavior.
Fantastic.
Additionally, subject matter specialists are invited, and then they get a lot of value-added information
True.
during this 14-week training.
Absolutely.
A fantastic training program, much sought after by many kids of Mysore.
Right, right. I appreciate that. I wish when I was a child, we had so much of nature education a part of our curriculum. I think I keep telling my teachers that we teach so many things, calculus, algebra, and all of that. We don't teach basics of, many things that we need to know as a citizen of this country.
And there is one second.
Yeah.
There is another recent sort of development in Mysore Zoo post my retirement. Now they are organizing what are known as conservation talks.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they call scientists, specialists, and others once a month, and they give them the free platform and allow them to talk for about 2 hours.
Right.
And anybody interested in the city of Mysore or elsewhere
Right.
are allowed to go and attend to that.
Lovely.
So lots of educational programs are happening.
Right.
I think zoos play a very vital role.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I would love to share this with people who have some opinions of zoos that they would want to probably know about the other side of the story. Sir, since we have been remembering a lot of old incidents, are there some interesting stories that you want to remember and let our viewers know about your tenure as a forest officer, some interesting conservation stories or some incidents where as a forest officer it was an amazing experience for you? Anything that you'd love to remember?
Yeah, maybe I'll share a few of them. While working in Mysore Territorial Division way back in 91,
Right.
I got a message that one of my foresters has been brutally assaulted.
Oh, I see.
His name was Povaya.
Oh, okay. I think
You
I
may
know
be
him.
knowing
For
him.
Nagarhole, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I know
same
him.
Povaya, he was my forester. He was assaulted when he tried to prevent a group of villagers from smuggling forest produce
I see.
from the Nagarhole National Park area only. Then these villagers from a notorious village called Gundatur,
Right.
which is adjoining Karapur.
Correct.
And then my information was that these villagers, whenever the departmental people go near the village, they all join together, gang up together, and then try to assault and beat up the forest personnel.
Oh my goodness.
So they were really behaving like a mafia. So once this happened, I immediately sort of went to my official superior, the conservator of forests, and discussed with him. He says, let's not hurry up now. We will plan proper strategy and then act. So we took a couple of days and then we mobilized the frontline staff from 3-4 adjoining divisions
I see.
like Hassan, Kolegal, Chamrajnagar, Hunsur.
Right.
We mobilized nearly a team of 200 people
Right.
and then mobilized about a dozen departmental elephants,
Sure.
half a dozen trucks. We also kept the police informed,
Right.
telling that we are going to raid this village because we know that a lot of contraband material has been hidden and stored.
I see.
And because when my man went there to check it, he has been brutally assaulted.
Oh.
We have to sort of improve the morale of the staff. So we have to act.
Right.
But I also, in the back of my mind, knew that even a deputy conservator had been assaulted when he attempted to go to the village
Oh my
a
goodness.
few years earlier
I
before
see.
me.
I see.
So we planned properly and went.
Right.
And then since I knew the village is very notorious, I had told them I would be leading from front.
I see.
And before me would be this herd of about 6 to 8 departmental elephants.
I see.
And I had given orders that if anybody tries to come and attack us, you run the elephants over them.
I see.
I will
Wow.
handle the situation.
Wow.
So the moment we marched, the villagers got petrified.
I see.
So they never thought of daring attacking us. They let us into the village and allow us to sort of search various premises, houses, and things like that.
Right.
One whole day, we couldn't recover much except a few logs of timber hidden in cow sheds.
I see.
Then we had made arrangements for all the staff to stay locally in the nearby villages, nearby offices,
Right.
and forest guest houses and things like that. Even food had been arranged for them. At night, information started trickling. You please search so and so's house at such and such a place. Something is hidden.
I see.
So every night like that, we kept on getting information.
Right.
And after a 5-day sort of raid, we could recover nearly about 20 to 22 truckload of timber,
Oh, wow.
which was all transported to the nearest timber depot.
Right.
And then this one act of the department brought in so much of confidence in the staff.
Sure.
From this happened in 91.
Right.
For next 9-10 years, there was no incident of poaching or smuggling from this village
Right.
within the premises of our forest.
Sure. I mean, we pass through Gundattur every day on the safari.
I
even
know,
now.
yeah.
Fantastic. Sir, there's one.
This is one such instance. And then another, when it comes to conservation, see, I should narrate the story of Basur Kaval. I
Okay.
don't know whether you are aware of this.
Oh, I'm afraid I'm not.
Okay. Kaval in Kannada means a cattle grazing area.
Okay.
Basur Kaval is a very small patch of grassland near Birur
Oh, okay.
in Chikmagalur district.
Okay.
And this area was earmarked for breeding a particular breed of draught animal called Amrutmal.
I see.
Amrutmal is a very famous draught animal used by farmers.
I see.
So this land was under the control of the Animal Husbandry Department
Right.
for the purpose of breeding Amrutmal breed of cattle.
Sure.
Unfortunately, they had not put the land into proper use. So since this was a sort of a virgin habitat, wildlife started occupying this area.
Right.
So much so that we could find black bucks, Indian fox,
Oh,
jackals,
right.
even grey wolves,
Oh, wow.
plus about 70 species of birds.
Fantastic.
So then we had a very young deputy conservator of forests of Chikmagalur by name Lingaraj.
I see.
So he started documenting. He was also a photographer to begin with.
I see.
So he started documenting what is available in this area.
Right.
Then we prepared I was in the headquarters. I was
Right.
the chief conservator of forests of communication and information.
Right.
So I was the conduit between Lingaraj and the head of the department.
I see.
And then we developed a proposal and then to see whether this could be declared as a conservation reserve.
Oh, okay.
Instead of the area getting wasted, why not we declare it as a conservation reserve so that the wildlife living therein also get the required protection.
I see.
The proposal went before the state board for wildlife, but the animal husbandry department are very vehement. They didn't want to sort of give away this area
Right.
so
right.
easily.
Right.
Then the following year, further documentation was there made by Lingaraj with more photographs, and a very, very powerful proposal was redrafted and sent.
Right.
Fortunately, this time Mr. Anil Kumble was also there as the vice chairman of the State Board for Wildlife.
Right.
So we had briefed him as well.
Sure.
So this time, in fact, the Animal Husbandry Department could not be sort of, they could not have their say. They were silenced, and the proposal went through.
Right.
And it has now been declared as a conservation reserve.
Fantastic.
So now the whole area is protected. In fact, a local politician wanted to form a road bisecting this property.
Right.
That has been prevented. The animals are safe and secure.
Sure.
So anybody wanting to see black bucks or foxes, that's a fantastic place.
I see.
And if you go in winter months, you get a lot of predatory birds of prey also.
Oh, fabulous. I have never been there. I should try my.
So this is a contribution of photography
Right.
towards conservation.
Lovely.
A similar example is that of Magadi Kere.
Oh, yeah.
You may be aware of Magadi Kere in
Near the
Gadag.
correct.
Yeah.
The bar-headed.
Bar-headed geese come there every year for wintering.
Right.
And then another officer started documenting the richness of the bird life.
Right.
And he made a pakka proposal after studying and photographing over a period of time.
Right.
And recently it has been declared as a bird sanctuary.
Fabulous.
So this is the contribution of photography
Towards
conservation. Yeah.
Great. I would love to hear such examples. Okay, sir, here's an interesting question which is not in my list. It's an extempore question because I see a contemporary era of my mother being in the district court of Mysore covering Veerappan's case. And of course, you were an officer in the Karnataka Forest Department during the same time. Can you tell us some interesting stories about the Forest Brigade and how the Forest Department had this big problem of Veerappan, smuggling, poaching, and of course, a lot of issues with death with Forest Department and stuff like that?
Yeah, in fact, he was a very bad nuisance, bad influence on the forests and forest dwellers like the wildlife and even the other people.
Right.
He was merciless. He used to kill anybody who would inform anything about him to the authorities of police or forest.
Sure.
And then I do remember on 14th August 91, when
Right.
I was inspecting in HD Kote areas, I got a message that the Mysore SB has been ambushed and killed by Veerappan.
Wow.
Immediately I rushed back and then went to the mortuary, and then I found that Mr. Hari Krishna was dead. Along with him, another 4 or 5 police officers were dead,
Right.
of which one was a very famous sub-inspector by name Shakil Ahmad.
Right.
Incidentally, he also comes from Mysore, and I think he had his house in Yadavgiri.
1 kilometer from my house.
I see. And then Mr. Dharam Singh was the home minister then.
I remember.
We got a message in the night that he would be coming to Mysore to pay his respects. So we all went there at midnight, and then Mr. Dharam Singh laid wreaths in the mortuary.
Right.
And the following morning, also the police personnel gave their farewell.
Right. Right.
And then the bodies were sent back to the respective homes.
Right.
Incidentally, my forest minister also messaged me that he would like to come and then
Right.
pay his last respects. So I took him to Mr. Hari Krishna's residence.
Sure.
They were about to shift his body to his native place.
Right.
So after paying our respects at his residence, we went to Shakil Ahmad's residence,
Right.
paid our respects there as well.
Sure.
It was a very, very bad and shocking incident, just a day before the Independence Day.
Shakil was, I think, 31, 32 or
Very
something
young
like
man, very young and dynamic officer. Very young and dynamic, but then had a very early unfortunate end.
What about Mr. Srinivas?
Srinivas was killed in November 2011, and then I was the first to be informed by the police authorities.
Right.
The DIG of Police Mysore, then Mr. K.R. Srinivas, phoned me up and told me that Jaikumar Srinivas has been shot at.
Right.
Further details will be notified a little later. Immediately, I kept my official superiors informed of this dastardly act.
Right. Right.
And then I was asked to stay put in Mysore for coordinating everything.
Right.
And other people started moving towards Kolegal and other areas. Subsequently, we realized that he was shot, killed, then beheaded,
Right.
and his head had been taken away.
Right.
Only the headless body was recovered,
Wow.
and the headless body was brought to the hospital, postmortem was done, and then thereafter the body was brought over to Bangalore
Right.
for performing the final rites.
Sure.
A few weeks later, one human skull was recovered, but we are not sure whether it is of Srinivas or somebody else's.
I remember as a teenager, Veerappan was, a very active topic because from Mysore, Andolana newspaper, my mother in the court. I remember Veerappan had offered to surrender to Mr. Srinivas, and that's why he went alone or something.
No, it was a dirty ploy, a dirty game played by him. In fact, Veerappan's brother Arjuna was living with Srinivas.
Right.
Srinivas was trying to reform him. And then I know for sure that Srinivas had a great opportunity of killing Veerappan.
I see.
Srinivas had an AK-47 in his hand, and Veerappan was right in his front.
I see.
He could have killed him,
Right.
but Srinivas had the feeling or idea of not killing him, catch him and reform him.
Oh,
So that decision of Srinivas ultimately became very bad, and then he had to pay with his life.
it's a sad story, sad story. So, interesting stories. I'm sure if you keep on digging your past 30 years in the department, there'll be so many more stories. So, by the time you actually retired, and if you think about it in the 70s and when you started, how was your feeling when you retired, sir? Did you see the wildlife of this country, the natural habitats in a better state over time? I'm sure, I'm guessing so. What's your opinion by the time you were retiring? Did you see it progressing towards a better future?
See, as far as Karnataka is concerned, definitely it is heading for good. Fortunately, in our state, we had an enlightened politicians,
Right.
enlightened bureaucracy,
Sure.
and very well-meaning forest officers as well. So that helped in creating a number of national parks and sanctuaries,
Right.
where the protection given to the wildlife
Right.
is of our primary concern.
Sure.
If you see, way back in 1987, we had an elephant population of about 2,700 in the state.
Right.
Today we have close to 6,000.
Wow. I see.
Yeah. Similarly, when it comes to a sort of a flagship species like a tiger, till 2000, it was actually impossible to sight a tiger in our forest.
Right.
Even if we see, it could be for a few seconds only, running across and things like that.
True. True.
But now, I mean, Bandipur, Nagrole, all these forests are brimming with tigers, and then and I think no day is going without a tiger being sighted.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the habitats have improved, the numbers have multiplied.
Right.
And if you still go back in time, there is a beautiful book published by the Mysore Palace,
Right.
Wildlife Preserves and Game Sanctuaries of the Maharaja of Mysore.
Oh, okay.
If you go through that book, he used to organize these wildlife expeditions to the visiting dignitaries like the viceroys and other dignitaries coming from abroad.
Right. Right.
I was going through those diaries recorded by the various officers at that point of time, which has been published in this book.
I see.
After putting about 100 staff for spotting animals, and these dignitaries going on elephant back for 4 days, they would come back citing only 2 sambars. This was the state of affairs.
I see.
So if you see between 1900 and now,
Right.
yeah, definitely, yeah,
Huge
things are improving.
Absolutely.
And then the laws are also becoming rigid.
Right. Right.
And then people are also getting enlightened.
Right.
And now, as I said, we are also enlisting the support and cooperation of the people living in and around the forest.
Right.
And making them as stakeholders
Absolutely.
in our conservation efforts.
Absolutely.
So things are definitely moving for the better.
I'm hopeful and very glad to hear that. While talking to you, I just remembered my grandfather, my mother's father, was a forest officer.
Oh, I see.
He retired even before I was born.
Okay.
And
Where was he working?
Chitradurga and Shivamoga. That's when he was posted in Shivamoga. I think probably very similar to your posting, because he retired when I was not yet born, so I don't know too much about his professional. But why I remembered that is somewhere it's there in the family about interest in wildlife, nature, and all of that. That's why I got interested probably. For youngsters who want to take up forestry, can you give some advice on how they should go about, especially if they're in school right now, or if they're teenagers? What should they study? What's the basics of getting into forestry if they want to become an IFS? What's the way forward?
See, there are a couple of avenues where a youngster can get into the forest department. At a lower level, it could be at the level of a range forest officer.
Right.
So, range forest officers are recruited by various states, and usually graduates, science graduates, are allowed to compete. They will be asked to write a competitive exam.
Right.
So, they will be evaluated there. Then there will be a sort of a physical endurance test.
Right.
They need to walk a certain kilometers of distance within a stipulated time.
Right.
And they need to have a minimum physical measurements
Sure.
in terms of height and chest and all that.
Obviously.
So people who get qualified will be sent for training
Right.
at the range forest officers training colleges.
Sure.
There are various places across India. So they will be sent there, and after training they get their postings within the state.
Right.
And the next avenue would be joining as State Service Assistant Conservators of Forest,
Right.
for which the recruitment will be done by the Karnataka Public Service Commission.
I see. Okay.
And here also only science graduates are entitled to try this competitive exam.
I see.
And the successful ones would get trained.
I see.
And then they will be posted as Assistant Conservators of Forest.
Fantastic.
If one has to enter at the level of the Indian Forest Service, then they have to write the examination conducted by the Union Public Service Commission. Again, the limit is limited to science graduates
Right.
with a certain minimum physical standards
Right.
and certain minimum physical endurance
Right.
limits also.
Right.
And those qualified will be sent to Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy for a 2-year training.
Right.
And thereafter for about 6 months to the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration,
Okay.
where they will be integrated with other civil services like IAS and IRS and others.
Right.
And then they come back to the state
Right.
and start as probationary officers.
Fantastic. Great. I hope a lot of youngsters who are interested in protecting nature and of course wildlife and stuff like that should take up such career options right now.
Yeah, lots of brilliant men are now joining the service.
Right.
Mostly IITs.
What about women? Is that an opportunity for women
Yeah,
as well?
there is a reservation quota for them as well.
Oh, I see.
There are quite a number of women IFS officers in the country today.
Right.
Even Karnataka, there could be more than a dozen.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous.
Incidentally, the executive director of Bannerghatta Biological Park is a lady today.
Ah, lovely, lovely. Good. So we had an advice about career in forestry. Now, for a lot of my viewers, what do you have to tell a newbie wildlife photographer, photo enthusiast, starting to do wildlife photography? Any words of wisdom and advice for them to take up what they should be looking forward to doing? Any suggestions and a few, what can you tell us about?
Yeah, anybody who wants to be a wildlife photographer, the shortest definition is f8 and be there. F8 is the aperture you set on your camera, so you require a camera to be a wildlife photographer.
Sure.
And be there means you have to be there where the animal or bird is found.
Right.
So you have to visit areas.
Right.
And then before visiting the area, you should get to know some basic information about the area, some basic information about the behavior of the animal or bird that you are looking at,
Right.
and develop lots and lots of patience.
True.
So impatience and wildlife photography don't go hand in hand.
True.
One has to be very patient and one has to be very ethical.
True.
Because we are going to an area which is not belonging to us.
True.
We are intruders there. So go there, enjoy nature, and then you can learn a lot. There are lots of lessons one can learn from nature.
Right.
And then once after having gone into a forest, it will de-stress you.
Right.
Your lungs will be clear. You will return healthy and happy.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. All right, sir. That was a fantastic suggestion to young wildlife enthusiasts. So, according to you, there are so many threats to wildlife across the globe. What are some of the major threats that you notice and needs immediate attention, according to you, sir?
I think globally poaching has become a very, very major threat.
Right.
It is estimated that next to narcotics, this is the largest paying sort of industry
I see.
in the world,
Right.
where the annual turnover of the illicit wildlife products is anywhere between 10 and 20 US billion dollars.
Oh my goodness.
So now very recently the WWF has come out with a report that during the last 50 years we have lost nearly 2/3 of the wildlife content of the world.
Oh my goodness.
And they say 68% of the species that are being documented have declined in the last 50 years.
Wow.
So poaching is a very major threat globally. Then degradation of habitats,
Absolutely.
biotic pressure, that is pressure exerted by man and animals
Right.
on precious natural resource.
Right.
Then I can say various developmental activities happening in and around,
Right.
more particularly like activities like mining.
Right.
So these are some of the issues
Right.
which need to be addressed.
Sure.
If at all we have to save and protect whatever little that is left of.
Sure.
They say in nature there are neither rewards nor punishments.
Right.
There are only consequences.
Absolutely.
So what we do to nature, what we sow, we reap.
Absolutely.
If we treat nature well, the rewards are phenomenal.
Right.
And if we ill-treat her, the consequences are disastrous.
Absolutely.
As we see every day, you see untimely floods, droughts everywhere. All these are on account of actions of man,
Right.
which has upset the balance of nature.
Absolutely.
Even the recent pandemic that has affected the entire world,
Right.
they say is an account of the dastardly actions of man
Right.
committed on
Sure.
nature.
Wildlife and nature. Absolutely. Great closing comment, sir. It's been a privilege to meet you after a few years now.
My pleasure, Jayant.
I think I forgot to ask you one question. It was basically the last time I met you was in the Coimbatore airport. You were the judge of the DJ MPC contest. I was the recipient of the award. It was
I
a
know.
very honorable moment for me. So I hope to see you travel, take pictures. Someday we've been talking about Madagascar or Svalbard. Hopefully someday I can see you on the field with me.
One of my things in the bucket list is to go to Svalbard. That is still there.
Right.
Perhaps God willing, I will be there with you.
Looking forward, sir. Thank you very much. Tumba.
Thank you, Jayant and Told family. Wish you all the best. 2020 has been a disastrous year.
Absolutely.
Hopefully the coming year would be nice and fine. Wish you all Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, sir. Tumba, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jayant.
Well, viewers, this was a fabulous conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, questions, please leave a comment on this video. And I'm going to bring much more, individuals who have achieved more than something in their life, like forest department, for example, conservation, photography, and stuff like that. I do hope to seek your support in the future as well. Thank you very much for being a part of this.